Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan Rahayu. Good afternoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Indonesia International Sustainability Forum 2025 thematic session titled Accelerating Clean Air Action, Mobilizing Financing for Clean Air Initiatives. Today's discussion will bring together government leaders, industry pioneers, financial institutions, and thought partners to explore practical ways to mobilize financing for Indonesia's clean air transformation, especially in the transport and industrial sectors. The session aims to align Indonesia's clean air priorities with real-world financing opportunities, focusing on actionable pathway to reduce emission, promote cleaner technologies, and support sustainable economic growth. On behalf of the session knowledge partners, Bicara Udara and Systemic, we would like to thank you all for joining us today. To begin the session, we are honored to invite our first speaker for the opening remarks. Please welcome Bapak Rahmat Kaimuddin, Deputy of Basic Infrastructure, Coordinating Ministry of Infrastructure and Regional Development. We will have 7 minutes for the opening remarks. Bapak Rahmat, the stage is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everybody. So, yang terhormat, my senior here, Pak Deputy Roy, and our partner in trying to solve this very wicked issue of air quality, as well as everybody, all distinguished guests that has attended this very important session. First of all, I hope, as a host of ISF, I hope you enjoy the event today, and hopefully you can spend time again tomorrow. I would like to just quickly discuss about this issue, what we want to talk about, which is air quality. We are all inhaling the same air. My previous boss, who is very rich person, general, keep reminding me, doesn't matter whether you are a coordinating minister or general, whatnot, we are all inhaling the same air. And therefore, air quality become something that is very, very important because it's kind of like a equalizer, if anything. We know in Indonesia, especially in Jakarta, air quality is not yet good. PM 2.5, blah, 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 especially during the rainy season. And we need to do something about it. The problem is, before, we don't know exactly what creates that issue. And then everybody will just start thinking, they'll start pointing fingers of what they don't like. So what we are trying to do is to at least use data and science-based so that we can do intervention. So we have done the studies for Jakarta and we keep updating it. And at least for Jakarta, the key issue is quite clear. That majority of the problems of air quality is actually coming from transport sector. Followed by, of course, energy and industry, construction, and as well as open burning. So what we need to do is we need to fix how we do our mobility. We need to fix how we generate our energy, our electricity, and heat, as well as how do we construct and hopefully how we handle waste so that we don't need to burn them. On October 7 and 8, just a few days ago, our ministry with also the Ministry of Environment in collaboration with Clean Air Asia and Viria, ENB, created a to create an intensive workshop with central and regional governments, especially from the greater Jakarta area, to engage in discussions and coordination aimed at identifying joint solutions to address air pollution challenges in the region. And this workshop brought together 20 institutions from central and regional governments and collectively agreed to issue a joint document publicly available as of today, titled Menuju Udara Bersih Jabodetabek, Sinergi Lintas Kementerian dan Daerah untuk Aksi Kolektif. Or basically, go to clean air in Greater Jakarta area. And then we basically have to synergize. It is our hope that this document will serve as a reference for the government to map out the necessary things to do and determine which stakeholders should be mobilized and engaged in collaborative efforts to implement these actions effectively. Our infrastructure mandate spans three critical levers for transport decarbonization and emission reduction. How can we expand public transport, right? So from private to public, mass transit system like MRT, LRT, BRT, it's all very, very important. And also feeder, so that we need to shift from private commuters into public. And then what we need to do also is vehicle electrification. Some of our public transport is already electric, like MRT, like LRT. But now our buses also start to get electric. But for private, then we need to do more. Our motorbikes, our cars, our logistic fleets, our buses, these need to be treated as air quality interventions as well, and not only for energy transition. So one stone, two birds, air quality and energy transition. And of course, we cannot forget about the existing fleets. Indonesia today have about 150 million vehicles. Therefore, 150 million exhaust pipes. We cannot get rid of them or change them to all electric in one go. So we need to make sure that these fleets still can comply with the emission standard. And in order to do that, we have to improve the quality of our fuel from currently high sulfur into at least Euro 4, aligned with our industrial standard, or low sulfur fuel. All of these interventions is actually technically feasible, but what we need to do is basically align our collective policy making, our collective business, and how can we structure all this financing, collaboration, how can we create infrastructures, depots, charging, and whatnot to be one system. And for our ministries, what we want to do as well is that we want to create infrastructure project facilitation office. Just few hours ago, we signed an LOI and MOUs together to work with ADB and Kiat of Australia, and hopefully next week we'll also work together with AIIB and the IFC and World Bank. And one of the things that we want to discuss is public transport, especially electrified public transport. So let us use this session to convene, to discuss, and to align what to do moving forward in this very critical issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Bapak Rahmat, for the insightful message. Next, we would like to invite Bapak Rasio Ridosani, Deputy for Pollution and Environmental Damage Control, Ministry of Environment, to deliver his opening remarks. We will have 7 minutes for the opening remarks, and Bapak Rasio, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Honorable Pak Rahmat and Ibu Ratna. Thank you for this opportunity. Actually, it's providing some slide in Bahasa Indonesia, and then I think that in Bahasa Indonesia, Pak. And that's, when I came here, I see that in English, make me a little bit nervous. Let's be talking about air pollution. Pak Rahmat already mentioned several challenges about air pollution control in Indonesia, and I do believe that when I see all the audience here, I'm a little bit optimistic. Not a little bit optimistic. I am very, very optimistic that we can solve this problem. Why? Because all of us here also the polluters. Polluters, they have principle, polluter pay principle. It means that everybody who is pollute air quality has to be responsible for that. When you come here, I do believe that none of you maybe by food, but mostly by car or object, yeah, even others kind of transportation. All kind of transportation also creating the emission. Now let's we talk about Jakarta situation. Pak Rahmat mentioned that not only Jakarta actually, another big cities Indonesia also face a little bit challenge. Bisa lihat slide nggak? Ada slide nggak? Yes, I would like to mention to you that currently we face a big challenge for air quality in Jakarta and other big city in Indonesia. When I state Jakarta, it means that Jabodetabek, Greater Jakarta. Because air pollution, it is very dynamic, right? You can move one place to another place. And then we cannot prevent that. It is where it's come from. But within this region, is air pollution getting a big challenge. As you can see that, every day, when I wake up in the morning, yes, minister call me, and a little bit in the afternoon, they call me, they ask me, what happened to air quality? And we have to check our quality monitoring system. This is the air quality index, the pollution index, and make us almost nervous. Why? Because you can see that in Jakarta, Jabodetabek area, almost perhaps 30% of our air quality, it is unhealthy. Sometimes it's 40%, especially during the dry season. And I would like to mention to you that when you see the number, yes, you can see we have many stations monitoring air quality in Indonesia, including Jabodetabek. And you can see that tidak sehat. If I'm wrong, tidak sehat and healthy, yeah? Yeah, this is the big challenge we face so far. When we see this number, actually, we make it more, loose compared to the real standard. WHO standard, WHO standard is 15 microgram. And then our standard is 55. And if we compare this, yes, it is not unhealthy, perhaps it's dangerous. This is the situation currently. And then what is the source of this pollution? The air quality, this is air quality challenge. Yeah, you can see that this based on a study is from public transportation sector, transportation sectors. It could be 32-41% during the rainy season and could be increased significantly during the dry season, 42 till 70%. And industry around, if compared with industry and also the power plant, almost 25%. In addition to that, also the construction and from the road dust, yeah, as well also the open burning. We're not including yet open burning because Jakarta area, Greater Jakarta also face the big problem with open burning. Yes, people they burn their waste and create also smoke and pollute the air pollution. Based on this data, you can see that this is how can we reduce this emission, this pollution. Since all of us also using the transportation, motorbike, automobiles, cars, and many other type of transportation that use a fuel, also we have to responsible for that. But the most important thing, Pak Rahmat, I just attended a couple of weeks ago. This is very interesting seminar, as conference. There is a very interesting data, Pak. In Beijing, air quality is getting better and better. But in others, in other big cities like Jabodetabek, also Cambodia and Vietnam, getting worse and worse. And when we find that, there's also many industry, especially the smelting industry, increase in Greater Jakarta. And then in China, they relocate that industry. It means that The challenge is not only from public transportation sector, but also from industry. Currently, I am involved in the big challenge recently, the radioactive waste in Cikande. And it's suspect that one of them from the smelting industry. Because when we're talking air pollution, it could be airborne. And then also radioactive also can airborne. This is where it means that we have to be concerned also with our industry policy, especially regarding to smelting industry. Also in power plant, using the coal. I mean, this is big challenge we have to face that. Since we're discussing about the financing, I think this is a good opportunity. For Bapak from SME, this is good opportunity to you because we need a lot of investment regarding to the air pollution control. Let's move to the next slide. What is key success story about key success factor on this air pollution? At least when we see that we need first is this effective policy, also the institutional arrangement and infrastructure support. Most of this, what we need is financing. Because today's topic discuss about financing. Ibu Rana, thank you very much. We cannot do anything without the finance. This blood of this, what is fighting against air pollution, it is the financing. And then I think this is a great opportunity to us to discuss how can we finance, fighting against air pollution within Jabodetabek. I mean, this is the key, the most important thing to be discussed in this session this afternoon. Let's move to the next another slide. We have separate strategy actually, regarding to control air pollution in Jabodetabek and other big city area in Indonesia, reduction from emission transportation, including also promoting clean fuel. Pak Rahmat mentioned also public transportation, EV, yes, and also I will add once, is also we have to provide for non-motorized transportation. Also, this is also very important to promote. But non-motorized transportation need also infrastructure support. Yes, we cannot walking by foot without the good pedestrian. So we need also supporting within this infrastructure. In addition to that, emission from industry and also power plant. We talk about this. We want to convert coal to the gas. Unfortunately, our natural gas is limited. So we're still using coal as the fuel of our power plant. And it's create a big challenge for air pollution. I would like to mention to you that in the next, what is the gain actually for better air quality? Now, in addition to that, also this open burning from our waste management. Most of our landfill still a big problem right now. Also in many kampung, yes, some desa, village around Jabodetabek, also they still burn, yes, for this agriculture waste, including also for their solid waste, for their sampah. Most of them, they burn it. It is using open burning. And last but not least, also construction, also dust from road and stockpile of the coal. I remember that when we checked that, they made a lot of complaint in Serpong area. They said that the PM2 is high. When we checked that, there's a lot of construction. And then with construction during the dry season, what happens? It is the dust become airborne, go to everywhere. I mean, this is also the big challenge. Last but not least is the weather modification. This is for aerosol, because the chemicals, the chemicals can make become the particulate, through the secondary chemical reaction. This is for the challenge. I think we have to do it, with weather modification. Last but not least, what we have to do it also, we have to enlarge the area of green space, because we do believe that plant also effective to reduce the pollution. The last slide for this opening remarks, I think. Yes, next slide. What is the gains we can get from the clean air? First, I do believe that with clean air, it will be increase our health. There's a lot of money you have government to spend, yeah, for this is cure the health problem from the air pollution. I think Burana has these numbers, a lot and a lot, yeah, money. But if we can reduce the this is air pollution, we can increase the public health. The second, about the city competitiveness. I got a lot of call from many of my friends, my colleagues, when they asked about the air quality in Jakarta, Jabodetabek area. People always mention that the second dirty cities, the third dirty cities, every day make, I'm a little bit nervous actually, but this will also affect the competitiveness of the city. The third, it is our national automotive industry. Many people don't understand why. Do you know that we are also the producer of automotive? Since there is no incentive to produce cleaner car, it means that we lose our competitiveness for the export. Because many other countries, they already set the standard of their car. It is with high standard for air pollution, emission reduction. Indonesia, still big challenge. Why? Because our fuel still high sulfur. With high sulfur fuel, yeah, we don't need to have the cleaner technology for car. If we put the cleaner technology for car, it is this the pollution control equipment in the car will be not effective. It means that it will reduce our competitiveness in international market. Last but not least is about the competitiveness in industrial estate. I talked with many directors from industrial estate. Indonesia has, I think, 198 industrial estate in Indonesia and 48 in Jabodetabek. Yeah. When we discuss with them, the need is a more cleaner fuel for their industrial estate. If not, they will lose their competitiveness. For example, the industry, if they mix, for example, they have mixed. There is industrial estate, there are some, the food industry, and another, it is the industry that using coal as a fuel. And then what happened? The air pollution, the emission from the coal will pollute the our food industry. It happens, what happens now in the one area, in the Banten, yes, they got problem with radioactive because airborne. And they will lose that industrial estate competitiveness. I think this is for opening remark. I do hope that we can discuss about this. How can we make clean, better air in Indonesia and make our life is more competitive, including make our life is more healthy and our industry competitive, as well also our city, and we can make the country great again. I don't discuss about the Trump, but it's at least make it great again. At least we have already great. And during we have Majapahit, Sriwijaya, make it great again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bapak Rasio, for your inspiring words. And before we proceed to the next agenda, we will have a brief photo session to capture this meaningful moment. We kindly invite Bapak Rahmat, Bapak Rasio, Ibu Ratna Kartajumena, and Ibu Novita Natalia, co-founder of Bicara Udara, Ibu Batari Saraswati, Director of Systemic, as well as our all panel speakers to come forward to take a group photo together. We kindly ask our photographers to prepare, and we invite everyone involved to come forward to the center of the stage. We will have a take shots together. All right, we will take the photo in 3, 2, 1. Once again in 3, 2, 1. All right. Thank you very much, Bapak Rahmat, Bapak Rasio, Ibu Ratna, Ibu Vita, Ibu Batari, and all speakers. You may now return to your seat. However, we kindly ask Ibu Batari Saraswati to remain on stage to deliver the next speech, setting the scene. Once again, please give a warm round of applause to our speakers and partners. To provide better context for our discussion, we will now continue with the next agenda, setting the scene, titled Accelerating Clean Air Action, Mobilizing Financing for Clean Air Initiative. This presentation will be delivered by Ibu Batari Saraswati, Director of Systemic. We will have 10 minutes for this session, and Ibu Batari, the stage is yours.
Selamat sore, good afternoon, distinguished guests, colleagues, and panelists. Terima kasih Pak Rahmat, Pak Roy atas opening remarks-nya. Thank you for being here with us. We are delighted that clean air has once again become one of the key themes highlighted in Indonesia International Sustainability Forum 2025. This is marking the second year, tahun kedua Bicara Udara and Systemic convene these important discussions at ISF. And today we are joined by industry leaders, from government, from financiers, to discuss how to best collaborate to accelerate clean air action, knowing that clean air action requires strong and sustained financing support. And before we move into a main agenda, the panel discussions, we'd like to set the scene and share our key findings from a report that we launched earlier this year, titled Better Air, Better Indonesia, that we developed in collaboration with Kemenko Infra, with also support from Kementerian Lingkungan Hidup. In our study, we take Jakarta as a case study given the severity of air pollution condition in Jakarta. And as Pak Rahmat highlighted and Pak Roy also pointed out, that we need a policy base based on data. So what we did is we joined forces with ITB. We conducted emission inventory study based on data post-COVID. And the result is consistent that transport, industry, waste burning, and construction sector contributes as major air pollution sources in Jakarta. Two sectors play a significant role. Transport, in particular, contribute 90% of carbon monoxide and 60% of PM 2.5. And industry also play a significant role, contributing 70% of sulfur dioxide and 60% of PM 10 emission. So that's why in today's session, we will focus the discussions on accelerating clean air in transport and industry sector. Based on this emission inventory, we identified 12 key levers to reduce air pollution, and most have been highlighted by Pak Rahmat and Pak Roy. This spanning across transport, industry, power, and waste sector. In transport, there are 4 key levers. One is accelerating low sulfur fuels, electrifying two-wheelers, four-wheelers, heavy-duty vehicles, electrifying Transjakarta buses, and expanding and integrating public transport system. In industry and power, transitioning from coal boilers to cleaner tech, installing post-combustion control at industries, installing emission control system at coal and gas power plants. In waste and construction sectors, 100% eliminations of waste burning activities, and implementing construction dust control at project sites. If we do all these 12 levers, it could reduce air pollution PM 2.5 up to 92% by 2030. And this is a significant step for cleaner air, healthier air for Jakarta. Out of these 12, 4 actually have the highest potential. So 4, namely implementing low sulfur fuels, electrifying two-wheelers, four-wheelers, and Transjakarta buses, and expanding public transport system, eliminating waste burning activities, and transitioning from coal boilers to cleaner tech. These 4 levers can contribute up to 80%. So if we want to focus our effort, we focus on transport as well as industries, as well as eliminating waste open burning. We also look into the cost effectiveness. Where should we allocate our financing? As Pak Roy mentioned, financing is what we needed at the moment. We draw in from World Bank study that look into abatement costs. Abatement costs meaning the cost needed to reduce 1 ton of PM2.5 emissions. And cost for implementing low sulfur fuels, as well as eliminating waste open burning, give a significant pollution reductions at the lowest cost. And also electrifying heavy-duty vehicles, 2-wheelers, 4-wheelers, and transitioning from coal boilers to electrified boilers to cleaner tech, it will bring the pollution reductions the most significant, although it needs higher capex and higher investment. So this highlights how we should channel a mix of financial instrument from concessional to capital to make sure all these interventions are financially viable. We need around 7.5 billion investment from public and private sectors to implement these interventions. But the return will be significant. It will reduce 80% of PM2.5 emissions, and this could bring health benefit valued as $27 billion. This comes from reduced healthcare costs, reduced BPJS claim, and from preventing premature deaths due to ISPA or air pollution related diseases. We all notice that we have a mix of financing instruments that we could leverage from grants, non-repayable funds, conventional finance to bridge affordability gaps, public finance in the form of budget subsidies, incentive to create enabling environment, risk-sharing instrument, as well as commercial financing to help scale this solution. And we can deploy this financing differently according to the sectors and the technology. For example, in transport, Bu Mayang Sari could speak more, Arthur could also speak more on this, that we need financing to support electrifications of heavy-duty vehicles, electrification of buses, which the challenge right now is that the initial capex remains higher than the fossil fuel alternative. For example, I think microbuses is around, for the electric microbuses is around 300 million IDR. The fossil fuel alternative is around 195 million rupiah. So we need a financing support in terms of conventional financing, for example, mobility as a service business model, also public financing in terms in the form of incentives, as we have seen in 2-wheelers and 4-wheelers electric vehicles. It has been support the early adoption of 2-wheelers and 4-wheelers. In industry, we've need also initial capex and investment to transition from coal boilers to cleaner tech, as well as to purchase air pollution control. And we have seen commercial banking, commercial finance actually supporting this transition. So this is the kind of discussion that we would like to hear more during our panel discussions, how we can leverage financing to support implementation of all these levers. To close, 2 main messages. One, air pollution is not only an environmental issue. It is an economic priority and public health priority. This affecting our competitiveness, our productivity, and our quality of life. And as Pak Roy and Pak Rahmat highlighted earlier, like we know the solutions, we know the technology levers. What we need more is collaborations, enabling policy, as well as financing support to scale the solution. So that hopefully helps setting the scene for our discussion today. Thank you very much and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Ibu Batari Saraswati, for the insightful presentation. And we kindly ask Ibu Batari to remain on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now move to our first panel discussion, Driving Clean Air Action in the Transport Sector. The session will explore strategies and financing mechanisms to accelerate clean transport solution from low-emission vehicles to sustainable mobility systems that can help reduce air pollution in Indonesia's major cities. We will have 40 minutes for the discussion and will be moderated by Ibu Batari Saraswati, Director of Systemic. Let's give a warm round of applause for Ibu Batari Saraswati.
We will dive right in. Kita akan invite our distinguished panelists. Untuk sesi yang pertama for the transport sector, we have invited 4 panelists from industry sector, from government, as well as from financial institutions. For the first panelist, I would like to invite Ibu Mayang Sari, Director of Finance Transjakarta. Under her leadership, silakan Bu. Senang bisa ketemu lagi Bu Mayang. Under her leadership, Transjakarta has been spearheading efforts to electrify BRT system in Jakarta. So we look forward to hear insights and progress from Transjakarta as well as discuss the next steps. Bapak Faris Pranawa, please welcome Pak Faris Pranawa to join us on the stage. Pak Faris Pranawa is Director of Public Financing and Project Development dari PT SMI, PT Sarana Multi Infrastructure. Pak Faris oversees the design and implementation of financing strategies that enable sustainable infrastructure development. Panelis ketiga, Bapak Fedi Alberto from Pertamina Retail. Pak Fedi Alberto is Director of Commercial and Operation PT Pertamina Retail. So Pak Fedi is overseeing the expansion of fuel stations in Indonesia, including the operations as well as the expansion ya Pak ya. Our fourth panelist, please welcome Arthur Nitteson, our old friend. Arthur is Head of Decarbonization Enablement and Partnership at APM Terminal, part of Maersk Group. Arthur leading decarbonization program at APMT and also leading partnership effort to advance electrifications and clean logistics in the port ecosystem. Thank you, Arthur. So, okay. Kita bersama dengan 4 panelis ini, terima kasih Bapak Ibu sudah berkenan untuk hadir. I'm going to use a mix of bahasa Indonesia and bahasa Inggris. Hopefully that's okay with you, the audience. I'll begin with the first questions. I'll begin with Ibu Mayang Sari. Transjakarta has set an ambitious goal to achieve 100% bus electrification by 2030. And currently, 330 buses are electric. This is a significant progress. However, we still have challenges moving forward, especially in electrifying medium and micro buses, the Jaklingko atau angkot dulu namanya ya Bu. And this is challenges because asset ownership structures are unique. It's not owned by Transjakarta, but owned by many cooperatives. And therefore, there is a constraint in terms of financing and scaling. And so the questions, Bu Mayang, how do you see this challenge being addressed and what steps are needed to accelerate the transition?
Okay, thank you Bu Batari. Good afternoon, all. Thank you for coming. And then maybe first of all, my statement is, if you are all using Transjakarta, even though it is not the EV, then you will reduce 94% of the emission. So then please use public transport then. And if use the EV bus, then we'll reduce the 99%. Why we left 1% then? So because sometimes everybody will asking what is about the resource of the electric in Jakarta. So then, but it is beyond Transjakarta control. So then the ambition actually is based on the governor decision in 2022 that all of the Transjakarta vehicle on the 2030 must be all 100% in electric. And by the 2027 should be at least 50%. So then the problem, I've already stated that we are running with the 23 operators. Not all is a big operator, has maybe the health, financial, and maybe have a good balance sheet. So then maybe half of our operator is a cooperative. Is a cooperative, maybe Pak Faris. So then we have to have the another point of view and maybe the approach, different approach for the cooperative. So the Transjakarta that now is already done is we give the long-term contract to the operator, 7 to 10 years, and now it's becoming started the 10 years. So then hopefully with the contract from the Transjakarta, so the operator can get the better interest rate. Because when we are managing the risk, then the financial institution usually will asking, what is your baseline? So what is the contract? And then hopefully it is improve the bankability of our operators. And second is like many of the risk division asking from the financial institution is, what is the electric vehicle? Mostly I think we all must be learning about the electric vehicle, because the question is why the price is so high, sometimes it's 2 times or 2.5 times from the ICE, and how is your managing the risk, etc. And the latest is how you managing the waste, the battery waste. So until now, maybe somebody, maybe Pak Roy from the Ministry of Environment, there is no regulation actually for the battery waste management. So many theory maybe, but in Indonesia currently there is no. And this is we have the question from the bank, from the financial institution, and hopefully there will be for the regulation of that. And another is we would like to have an access also from the foreign loan, maybe like a blended financing. But because Transjakarta get a revenue in rupiah, so then we will use Indonesia financial institution as a channeling, because we don't have maybe ability to managing the currency risk for that. So and for the microtrans, you see in Jakarta we call it Jaklingko, and Jaklingko actually is a feeder for the buses. So then with the coverage area of the Transjakarta currently in Jakarta is already 91.7%, and you can find the Jaklingko or microtrans at least 500 meters from your home. So then from the 10,000 vehicle that we must convert to electric in the 2030, about the 60% is a microbus. So maybe the 60% of the financing will be for the cooperative. So then the Transjakarta support is we try to make them more transparent, and then they already maybe now issue the financial statement. It is much better than maybe around the 7 years ago. And then we together maybe with the finance institution to improve the bankability of the cooperative. So then we have to find the channeling of the finance institution who maybe can support for the cooperative. I think that's it.
Terima kasih Ibu Mayang. Karena Bu Mayang juga udah lihat Pak Faris from the financiers. And tadi what Bu Mayang mentioned, one is battery waste management, two is financing support for cooperatives. Also, it's better to be in IDR because there is no, to reduce the forest risk, ya Bu ya. So therefore my first question is to Pak Faris. Pak Faris, with what Bu Mayang Sari mentioned, turning to you, are there specific financing instruments that can support clean transport and clean air initiatives? Are there any examples of blended finance structure or any financing instrument that SME that could be leveraged to finance transport electrification?
Okay, thank you Ibu, and very happy to be here with the distinguished panelists. First of all, our company, let me say that we are really committed to support environmental objectives. Since 2018, we already do a moratorium for a coal-fired power plant. So in that sense, we could enhance our climate-related project almost 40% of our portfolio. Our coal-fired projects maybe about 10% now. So we are really eager to support and to achieve environmental target because SDGs are our mission mandated by our shareholders. And therefore, we also established a platform, Ibu, we call it SDG Indonesia One platform, whereby we can provide facilities to project owner, to government, combining concessional loan, grants, and also fund from philanthropy in order to create a blended finance transaction in the project. At least I have 3 examples that I can offer today to support transportation sectors. As an example, Jakarta LRT, we support this project from the early stage, from preparation into financing. So we already have a good portfolio and that matters. With regards to our facility, first, I believe we are the first corporation in Southeast Asia to be accredited in GCF. GCF is a big fund manager, and we are able to to access finance for each facility in amount of 250 million US dollars. So it's quite a big fund, and we can access the fund. But the problem is how to prepare the project to be bankable. But they also provide a project development facilities, and therefore I believe this is a good opportunity, especially in transport sector. So Ibu Mayang, please, I would like to discuss this with you, Ibu, especially how to structure the project. I believe, I do hope that TJ also can access finance directly or through their partners. Yeah. That's the first facility. So GCF is a very good facilities that we can access together. The second is also we have a facility from French Development Institution, French Development Bank, and also IDFC. They call it NUCAP. This facility is specifically targeted to subnational government related to urban projects. They also provide a PDF facility, and therefore we think we can help many subnational government in creating or preparing transport project, especially to procure electric bus. If we're talking about these specific sectors. And also we have a facility that could combine, especially with regards to the subnational government, because we understood that the transport project will heavily need some kind of subsidy. So supporting subnational government is an area that we really aspire to do. Nowadays, we already have approximately 100 subnational government, and I believe we can discuss this or turn this aspiration into reality with regards to transportation sectors. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Faris. Very happy to hear that there are existing examples, there are existing facilities that we could potentially explore for Transjakarta. You mentioned also the project preparation, the project structuring is also very important, and we'll get back to that later, Pak Faris. For now, I would like to turn into Arthur for APM Terminals, because I like to highlight electrification of heavy-duty vehicles, electrification of trucks. It's also not an easy task in Indonesia. We know that that's one of the source of air pollution is coming from fossil fuel trucks. And Arthur, since APMT operates globally and has piloted initiatives to reduce emission and improve air quality in logistic and port operations. So we would like to get inspiration from your experiences, particularly around fleet electrifications, electrifying of heavy-duty vehicles or trucks. What can be replicated here in Indonesia?
Thank you, Bu Batare. So APM Terminals is part of Maersk Group. Maersk, you know from the containers and the ships, of course. Our ships have been calling Indonesia for 108 years. And the logistics part of Maersk Group runs 10 warehouses in Java. And I'm part of the part of Maersk that runs ports, container ports. To our great frustration, so we have about 7 container ports in Southeast Asia, including the largest one worldwide, which sits in Tanjung Pelepas, just across the strait. And to our great frustration, we do not yet have a container terminal in Indonesia. So Maersk is active here. We've been here for a long time, but we're very eager to change that. So just this morning, I was in Tanjung Priok with also representatives from PT SME, negotiating with Pelindo to see if we can change that as quickly as possible. If I go back to the speech that Pa Roy gave earlier, I want to express my full support on behalf of Maersk Group for the objective of bringing Indonesia back to the days of Majapahit and Sriwijaya. Both were maritime nations, of course, especially Sriwijaya. So let's bring Indonesia back to the days when Indonesia as a maritime hub for Southeast Asia and the world. But these were also days, of course, when there was no air pollution in the ports in Indonesia. And we as APM Terminals know how to run a port without air pollution. When the famous General Zhang He came with his treasure fleet to Palembang and he offloaded his goods, there was no air pollution involved. So we figured out, as Bu Batare said, how to do that. And the good news is, whenever we invest, so also when we invest in Indonesia, we will bring that technology and those operating systems with us. So there will be a port with no Scope 1 and Scope 2 CO2 emissions and no tailpipe emissions, because these vehicles don't have tailpipes, they're all electric. So how do we do that? We do it by, on the one hand, electrifying everything, so making sure that there's no diesel equipment At this moment, every container terminal in Indonesia runs on partially electric equipment, but partially also diesel equipment. So even the greenest ports in Indonesia still have terminal trucks that run on diesel. We don't do that anymore. So we're globally busy replacing all of our diesel fleet at the time when it needs to be replaced with electric. And whenever we have a new port, we make it all electric with renewable electricity. Now, the good news is that this is something we could copy-paste immediately to Indonesia. There are really no barriers. This is not something that we only do in Europe or in the US. We opened a new port in Croatia in Europe just 2 weeks ago. We're going to open a new port in Brazil in the early days of 2026. Both are completely net zero. Happy to go into kind of the details of it, but this I think is the larger picture.
Thank you so much, Arthur. But I would like to highlight that if we want to electrify our trucks, as well as the port ecosystem, we could attract investor and partners global like APMT and Maersk Group. So there's an opportunity. I think there's an opportunity because I think for global investors and global partners like APMT, net zero, zero air pollution is the key metrics, like one of the objective and one of the requirement, right? So that's, I think, indicating demand, indicating that there is a supportive environment to move toward electrifying trucks and port equipment. We'll dive more into that in the interest of time. I would like also to go to Pak Fedi. Pak Fedi is overseeing SPBU and SPKLU. And tadi from Transjakarta, microbuses, Jaklingko require also a depot management, butuh charging stations, and we like to highlight on Pertamina area to support transport electrification. How do you see Pertamina with managing the largest SPBU or fuel station in Indonesia? How do you see the collaboration opportunities to support the players like of Transjakarta who needs more depot that can also serve as a charging places? Thank you, Pak.
Okay, thank you. I would like to explain first about Pertamina Retail. We are the subsidiary of Commercial and Trading Subholding of Pertamina Group. So we operate gas station, which is company-owned and company-operated. So we manage around 180 gas stations spread across Indonesia. And as for now, we already have 15 for the EV charging for four-wheelers and 92 for battery swap station all over in our gas station. So we plan to make our gas station as an integrated energy station, not only selling fuels, but also integrated with EV charging and other consumer needs in energy station. And actually, if we talk about the collaboration between Pertamina Retail and PT Transjakarta, we already did the collaboration as we, Pertamina Retail, provide for the gas fuel for the Transjakarta in some Transjakarta depot, like in Pemuda and Daan Mogot. And I think we can elaborate more if we could extend the collaboration into the EV charging for the Transjakarta. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Fedi. So, Bu Mayang Sari, Pertamina could also be a partner for supporting your transport electrification effort. So, I would like to, I think, go back to Ibu Mayang Sari. I think when we are talking about procuring more electric buses, there is also a challenge of retiring the existing fossil fuel vehicle, the existing internal combustion engine fleets. And how can Transjakarta manage this transition effectively? Are there any frameworks, any models that you are exploring that could be discussed also here? And in the interest of time, we would like to limit it to 2-3 minutes, Ibu.
Okay, so then actually currently, maybe since 2 years ago, we already stopped procuring or maybe has like a operating rental from our operator for the ICE. So all, the new contract is for the EV. So then by the 2030, if all maybe changing to the EV, then 97% is already changed to EV. But then also there is a barrier actually, like the initial cost of the EV is much higher, and then also the charging installation. So the charging installation actually is about the 6% of the bus price. So then if we can use we can use maybe the public SPKLU, it is better, because if we buy like the electric charging, so then it is only maybe used one time or two times maybe in a day. But if we use the public, or maybe we can, like a Pertamina can provide, they can also use this for another, so then it is more effective. And another maybe the advantage of the electric vehicle is from diesel to electric, actually the energy conversion is more effective, about the 30%. This is our study. And for the maintenance and spare part is also can be reduced, and the contract duration also can be longer. So we hope that the Jakarta government provincial can also be longer the lifetime of the electric vehicle, from the 10 years to the 15 years. And maybe we have to know also that for overall, the electric vehicle or the electric buses can reduce about the 6 to 7% of the cost. So then I think it is a good idea to change all to the electric vehicle.
Thank you, Ibu. So from TCO, from total cost perspective, it's lower than
Lower the ICE.
than the
Lower
ICE.
it is about the 6 to 7% from the ICE.
Right. And okay, and actually the charging station is 6% out of the
Of
cost.
the cost of the buses.
Yeah, so if we could
Yeah.
reduce that more, that will be even more.
So it is not only the price, but also for the microtrans,
Yeah.
which is usually owned by the cooperative member, and they don't have maybe ability or maybe financial support to buy also the electric charging, or maybe their electric capacity in their house. Sometimes the microtrans is keep in their garage, so then it is better if we can maybe have a opportunity to have a cooperation for that from the Pertamina.
Thank you, Bu Mayang. I'll like to turn into Arthur again, reflecting to Ibu Mayang points. Also, there's a need for financing support for cooperatives. Also, like policy enablers that Ibu Mayang mentions, like expanding the lifetime of electric vehicle from 10 years to 15 years actually will help as well. And Arthur, from your experience, what financing models, partnership, or policy enablers have proven most effective in unlocking investment for decarbonizations as well as for reducing air pollution?
The very short answer is regulations that make things that just make good business sense mandatory help. I'll say a little bit more about that. The other thing that's really helpful is grants, so government giving grants. But before I go into that, I think it's good to take a step back and look at the bigger picture, which is exactly the picture that Ibu Mayang also painted. Because where we don't need financial support is in the big job of electrifying all this equipment, because we, like Bu Mayang says, we also see that it actually makes good business sense. It's in the money. We see even higher percentages than what you quoted in savings, on maintenance and especially on energy use. We now have globally 52% of our electricity is renewable all over the world. And in all countries except for one, it's cheaper to go renewable than to go coal. So for us, the big picture makes a lot of sense. We are also fortunate to be a very large company, so we can we still have $20 billion in cash that we earned, by the way, during the pandemic. And I was one of the victims because I moved from Jakarta to Amsterdam, and they charged me very high fees for my container. So right now I'm trying to earn this back a little bit but anyway, so we have enough cash as a company, and we are able to also access I think we're AA rated or something. So we're able to access loans at very good rates. So all of that is to say, in these cases, we're really ready to invest, and we don't really need much support. But the points where it does help is, so I talked about regulations that make things that make good sense mandatory. One of the things that's a little bit in ports, but in our scope 3, as it's called, is ships that are at berth, right? That are in the port. They still need to run their auxiliary engines, and that's actually not only a lot of CO2, it's a lot of air pollution too. You can solve that by installing shore power. So basically having the ship plug in. 80% of our fleet is going to be shore power enabled in 2 years. And right now, our fleet is only plugging in China, in California, and in Morocco. Why? Because it's mandatory in those countries. So make it mandatory, and we'll make sure that the infrastructure is there, and we'll nudge our colleagues in the shipping department that they do this. The second part I wanted to talk about is grants. So what we see is in the US, US and Europe together, we received about $360 million in grants in the past year. This is largely to accelerate replacements. So especially in the US, in California, for example, and in New York, we're accelerating our replacements, just like what Bu Mayang said. In Europe, it's mostly to install shore power. And more these facilities are becoming available for Indonesia too. So I'm literally in conversations for grants for an investment in Indonesia. So that's a very attractive way of going there. Yeah.
Thank you, Arthur. So one thing to highlight: fleet electrifications make good business sense. It's no questions, like the TCO. It's more effective. It's cheaper in the long run, like in the total cost of ownership, and regulatory who support businesses and grants as much as possible. We leverage it, especially for those that could breach, early investment into fleet electrifications and port operations. And I'd like to move to Pak Fedi again, Pak. Since we need to also to talk about Euro 4 fuel standards for a bit, and since we know Pertamina already provide Euro 4 compliant, Pertamina Dex, Pertamina Green, but we know that in the market share, the adoption is low compared to the other alternatives. And what is the strategy, or how do you also tell to the customers that there's a difference between Euro 2 and Euro 4, and you already provided the Euro 4 fuels, and how do you make sure that the customer know the difference, and what the strategy to increase adoptions of Euro 4 compliance fuel, Pak?
Okay, so it's true that Pertamina already provide a Euro 4 compatible comply fuel. For the gasoline is Pertamax Green 95, it's Euro 4 comply, and for the gas oil is Pertamina Dex, that's also low sulfur fuel for the diesel. But unfortunately, there's also, we have to distribute the PSO, public service obligation, for the gas oil. In this term is solar, but the solar is also now from the government, they mandatory that the solar must be mixed with bio. So we now distribute the 40% B40 biosolar. And for the customer, we also, in collaboration with the authorized dealer for the vehicle, that we recommend that the customer need to know what the fuel they must use for their vehicle, such as if we talk about the engine for the modern car like Mitsubishi and Toyota, Mitsubishi Pajero and Toyota Fortuner, they should use that Pertamina Dex for their vehicle. So, but somehow there's still some customer don't care. They're using their fuel for their vehicle, using their solar, because the price gap is very, very big. For the solar is only almost $7,000 per liter, but Pertamina Dex is almost 16,000 rupiah per liter. So, but we also give our customer education through our social media, through our advertorial, and also through many occasions if we have opportunity to talk with the customer directly. Sometimes I directly go to the gas station and I talk with the customer and tell them about the quality of the fuel. And every opportunity we always try to educate our customer how they used to use the perfect fuel for their vehicle, like that.
Thank you, Pak Fedi. Our friends at Bicara Udara also actively advocate about low sulfur fuel, so some joint forces maybe in terms of consumer awareness, public awareness, Pak Fedi. And I think to close, Pak Faris, since the common thread of today's discussions is the need for more financings, and I know you have SDG Indonesia One that have looked into numbers of ESG metrics, how we can integrate our quality improvement as one of the core impact metrics to basically channel more financing into this effort.
Yes, thank you, Ibu. Indeed, we have been forefront for the financing of project aligned with SDGs, especially related to climate. In order to push more initiative or more metrics, we at PT SMI do an integrated environmental and social due diligence before we finance any specific project. Now, those environmental risk assessment look pollution prevention, emission intensity, and local air quality implications as matters that we assess and put that mitigation action into the agreement. So we want our client, our partners to follow the best practice of environmental and social risk mitigation. In the future, I believe it's not only CO2, but also matters that directly affect urban health. Yeah, that's the first aspect or know-how how to improve our air quality. The second is we are still in discussing this, but we already try in one of our client. It's a water company in Java, local water company, where we apply a performance-based lending. If our clients success in reaching certain KPI, and then we provide interest rate incentives. So from the due diligence stage and into the loan structure, we try to incentivize our client to perform better, especially related to the air quality. So these two ways are a main action that we will try to apply in our projects. Thank you.
Terima kasih banyak Pak Faris. Masih ada waktu atau tidak atau udah oke. Mungkin quickly panelists di sini mungkin satu atau dua sentence as a closing statement from each of your organization or institutions. What do you think need to be done more, or what you wish to see more happen? What support to accelerate clean air action in the transport sector? Bahasa Indonesia, bahasa Inggris boleh Bu, Pak, but we limit to 1 or 2 sentences as a closing statement. Thank you. Silakan mulai dari Bu Mayang dulu, Bu.
Thank you, Bu Batari. So then, hopefully for the EV electrification of the buses in Jakarta and the Great Jakarta, or maybe in another city in Indonesia, there is a financial support. So also the better understanding of the EV from all of the stakeholder, including the financial support, and also the regulation from not only from the procurement lifetime and also for the waste management. And also maybe I just highlighted that for the EV buses, electrification of the buses is also maybe improve the SGD, because the participation of the woman can be improved because it is not greasy anymore. So then, thank you.
Thank you, Ibu. So I believe at PTSMI, we are not just financing projects, but we are financing impact. So in the future, aligning capital inflow with air quality outcomes will play a big part in trying to establish a new generation of infrastructures that make Indonesia cities cleaner, healthier, and more competitive. Thank you.
Okay, as for Pertamina Retail, eagerly to expand more our channel all over Indonesia to install more EV charging in every our gas station, because maybe most of our location for the gas station is strategically located. So that's why we are very eager to expand more about EV charging, but we also need the government support for the standardization, especially for the two-wheelers, for the battery type. Maybe we can use only 1 or 2 type for the battery, so for the investor is cheaper for capital expenditure, like that. Thank you.
I have 2 messages. The first one is accelerate renewable electricity by a lot. And the second is in tenders for new container ports, don't ask for low emissions, ask for no emissions.
Great, thank you. So with that, we close our first panel discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you to all speakers and our moderator for such an insightful and engaging discussion on advancing clean air action in Indonesia's transport sector. We will now proceed with a brief photo session. We kindly ask our photographer to prepare, and please look forward and come to the center of the stage. All right, we will take the photo in 3, 2, 1. Once again in 3, 2, 1. All right. One more time. 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much to our speakers and moderator from the first panel, and you may now return to your seat. Once again, please give a warm round of applause to our speakers and moderator from the first panel discussion. We will now continue with our second panel discussion, driving clean air action in the industry sector. The session will discuss how industry can play a critical role in reducing emission through innovation, cleaner production system, and effective financing partnership to drive sustainable industrial transformation. The session will be moderated by Ibu Kristal Amalia, Head of Partnership Bicara Udara. Please welcome Ibu Kristal Amalia.
Good afternoon, distinguished guests. I hope you have been enjoying the insights from our first panel. For this second panel, as some of the topics will touch on policy and implementation, and to allow all speakers to express their views in the terms that we use daily in our professional context, please allow me to conduct the session in Bahasa Indonesia. Perkenankan saya mengundang para narasumber untuk panel kedua kita yang berjudul Mendorong Aksi Udara Bersih di Sektor Industri. Yang pertama, izinkan saya memanggil kembali Bapak Rasio Ridosani, Deputi Bidang Pengendalian Pencemaran dan Kerusakan Lingkungan, Kementerian Lingkungan Hidup. Silakan kepada Bapak Rasio untuk dapat duduk di kursi yang telah disediakan. Kemudian yang kedua kami persilakan Bapak Apit Priyanugraha, Kepala Pusat Industri Hijau, Kementerian Perindustrian untuk bergabung di atas panggung. Berikutnya kami mengundang Bapak Sani Iskandar, Wakil Ketua Umum Kadin dan Apindo untuk berkenan naik ke panggung. Silakan kepada Bapak Sani untuk dapat mengisi kursi yang telah disediakan. Oke. Dan yang keempat, kami mengundang Bapak Agung Prabowo, Direktur Corporate Banking PT Bank Negara Indonesia BNI. Silakan, Pak. Terima kasih kepada seluruh narasumber yang telah bergabung. Aman, Pak? Untuk foto-fotonya. Oke, pada sesi kali ini kita akan membahas sektor yang berbeda dari panel yang pertama. Kalau yang pertama bahas transportasi. Kalau yang kedua kita akan membahas langkah-langkah dan langkah-langkah strategis untuk mengurangi polusi udara dari sektor industri, sekaligus meninjau mekanisme pembiayaan yang dapat mendukung upaya tersebut. Berdasarkan riset inventarisasi emisi oleh Virya INB dan ITB, per 2023 diketahui bahwa sumber polusi terbesar di Jabodetabek, yang lebih besar dari Jakarta ya, itu datangnya dari emisi industri. Memang di Jakarta sendiri sektor transportasi menjadi penyumbang utama. Tetapi karena polusi udara bersifat lintas batas, maka dampaknya juga dirasakan oleh wilayah-wilayah tetangganya. Karena itu penting bagi kita untuk bersama-sama membahas langkah konkret yang dapat diambil serta skema pembiayaannya. Sebelum kita mulai, mohon izin saya akan membantu mengingatkan apabila waktu berbicara hampir habis agar semua narasumber mendapat kesempatan yang seimbang. Setiap narasumber memiliki waktu 3 menit untuk menjawab setiap pertanyaan. Untuk membuka diskusi, mari kita pahami terlebih dahulu konteks dan tantangan yang ada sebelum berbicara tentang langkah dan pembiayaan. Izinkan saya memulai dengan pertanyaan pertama kepada Bapak Rasio dari Kementerian Lingkungan Hidup, Pak. Kita akan masuk ke continuous emission monitoring, Pak. Dari KLH telah memperkenalkan sistem informasi pemantauan emisi industri secara terus-menerus, yang dikenal juga sebagai SISPEC, sebagai sistem pusat pemantauan emisi industri. Sejauh ini, apa kemajuan yang telah dicapai dan tantangan utama apa yang masih dihadapi untuk memastikan kepatuhan industri serta pemanfaatan data secara efektif, Pak? Silakan.
Terima kasih. Good afternoon, everybody. I think this is a good opportunity for me to share with all of you. This is what we think that how can we create better air, clean air, because it's clear that in our constitution said that everyone has a right to have clean and better environment, including clean air. And happy we are with Pak Sani, because we are the same name. He says, I am Rashid Sani and it's Sani Iskandar. I think it's my father. Then it makes me a little bit nervous also because I talk with Pak Sani. Now, I think this is when we discuss about continuous emission monitoring. Environmental management need really very strong data, because we always talk that we are scientific authority. You cannot make any policy without strong scientific based data. And then, in order to get more scientific data, we need a monitoring system. One of them, we call it CEMS, Continuous Emission Monitoring System. This should be installed in every industry that emits large emission. I mean, this is the key, including, for example, this is power plant, cement industry, smelting company, fertilizer, and oil and gas, and many others. With continuous emission monitoring, we can monitor. This is the emission from each industry, and then could be reported directly to our system in the Ministry of Environment. And if we see that any kinds of abnormality or the emissions above the standard, it's easy to us to react based on our authority. We send as a warning letters, or we can send our inspection, all our investigators to ensure that the industry operating normally. And this thing. The second, we need not only continuous emission monitoring, but we need also air quality monitoring system, because SAM is measure the emission from the chimney, the stack, yeah? And then what we need also to measure the ambient. Ambient is the air. This is ambient, air quality, around like this. And then we need also to install air quality monitoring system. And then now we have a policy in every industry that emit the large emission, as well also Pak Sani Iskandar, we also ask every industrial estate to install air quality monitoring system, also interconnected with our system in the ministry. We have government already installed, and then we need also from industrial estate, because around Jabodetabek is 48 industrial estate, and then also they contribute to the pollution. And also thank you, Pak Sani, because Pak Sani Iskandar also the former of Industrial Estate Association, Pak. Thank you for all your support with your members. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pak Rasio. Sekarang saya akan ke Kementerian Perindustrian yang diwakilkan oleh Bapak Apit. Tadi kita sudah mendengar Pak dari Kementerian Lingkungan Hidup. Sekarang saya izin bertanya, apakah kebijakan apa Pak yang sudah ada di Kemenperin untuk mengatasi tantangan pengendalian polusi udara, mengingat setiap sektor industri ini memiliki kontribusi yang berbeda-beda dan beberapa di antaranya juga merupakan industri yang sulit diatasi polusinya.
Ya.
Silakan Pak.
Baik, terima kasih Mbak Kristal, selamat sore semuanya. Thank you for having me, tapi karena saya lihat ini native Indonesian semua, jadi saya bahasa Indonesia aja, mohon izin Pak Deputi. Jadi terkait kebijakan Pak, kita di Kementerian Perindustrian saat ini sedang menyusun regulasi untuk pengurangan emisi industri. Nah, ketika bicara emisi industri, kita ada beberapa jenis emisi atau polutan yang sedang kita urusin. Satu, emisi GRK, gas rumah kaca, yang kedua air pollutant, yang ketiga emisi dari soil pollutant, dan juga water pollutant. Nah, semua ini termasuk satu lagi nanti di sistem reporting yang sedang kami bangun, kita juga mengumpulkan data terkait aksi mitigasi yang dilakukan oleh masing-masing industri. Jadi kami berupaya agar semua data emisi industri itu ya kami yang mengkoleksi gitu ya. Kami juga yang punya bertanggung jawab untuk mengendalikan. Itu kami akan membangun MRV system termasuk untuk air pollutant. Dan untuk emisi GRK kami juga nanti ke depan mungkin mulai 2027 akan melakukan pembatasan emisi GRK, bukan polutan udara. Nah, untuk emisi polutan udara saat ini secara kebijakan Bapak Ibu, kebijakan yang mengatur tentang batas atas emisi polutan udara itu dari tempat Pak Deputi, dari Kementerian LH, yang mengatur berapa banyak intensitas emisi yang keluar dari cerobong di industri. Kami melihat, dimohon izin Pak Deputi, kami mereview dan ini arahan dari pimpinan kami bahwa peraturan yang mengatur emisi polutan udara, baku mutu emisi tersebut, rata-rata sudah cukup lama. Sudah tidak relevan dengan kondisi saat ini, baik itu dari pengelompokannya, thresholdnya, dan juga perspektif lainnya, termasuk baku mutu emisi untuk ambien, khusus di kawasan industri nih Pak Sani. Dulu kita pernah diskus juga, kita juga ingin mengatur batas atas emisi polutan udara di kawasan industri. Kami saat ini sedang melakukan kajian dengan berbagai pihak, hasilnya nanti akan berupa rekomendasi kira-kira untuk masing-masing karakteristik industri yang berbeda, itu intensitas emisinya pasti berbeda di cerobongnya. Nah ini yang akan kami usulkan untuk diatur. Nanti mungkin deliverables peraturannya bisa juga di tempat Pak Deputi, di KLH, atau nanti kita bisa diskusi selanjutnya akan seperti apa. Namun tentunya secara kebijakan, kami merasa di industri ini sudah harus diatur lebih ketat lagi, dan kami sedang menyusun juga roadmap untuk pengurangan dan pengendalian emisi polutan udara. tentunya kebijakan ini nanti akan sifatnya sedikit restriktif ya, industri akan dipaksa tuh untuk nurunin emisi polutan udara. Tentunya kami juga akan memikirkan bagaimana skema-skema pembiayaan dan lain-lain supaya ketika kami memaksa industri untuk turun emisi itu, mereka tidak juga turun daya saingnya gitu ya. Dan kami nanti mungkin di segmen kedua kita akan bicarakan terkait usulan skema pembiayaan yang kami siapkan. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih Pak Piat. Oke, menarik ya Pak. Jadi kita mulai bisa melihat nih peran Kementerian Perindustrian dan peran Kementerian Lingkungan Hidup. Harapannya juga bisa nanti dikolaborasikan untuk sama-sama lingkungan kita bisa jadi lebih baik. Baik, saya akan bergeser ke Pak Sani Iskandar. Pak, sektor swasta mulai dari energi dan manufaktur hingga jasa dan logistik memainkan peran penting dalam pertumbuhan Indonesia sekaligus mempengaruhi kualitas udara. Tadi Pak Apit juga sudah mention sejalan ya Pak bahwa kita ingin ini meningkatkan daya saing gitu. Jadi menurut Bapak bagaimana pelaku usaha dapat memandang target udara bersih sebagai peluang untuk mendorong inovasi dan meningkatkan daya saing industri nasional? Silakan Pak.
Oke, terima kasih moderator. Ya, sepertinya Bu Kristal ini sudah cocok nih ngatur urut-urutannya nih. Jadi yang pertama, kedua dari regulator ya, Pak Rasio, Pak Apit. Yang ketiga kami dari para pelaku usaha. Nanti kesimpulannya, solusinya ada di Pak Agung. Ya, jadi mungkin yang perlu kita pahami bersama, jadi sebetulnya memang upaya-upaya untuk mengurangi emisi udara yang diakibatkan oleh industri, khususnya industri manufaktur, sebetulnya sudah sangat ketat sekali dilakukan oleh pemerintah. Jadi melalui dua kementerian, ya dalam hal ini Kementerian Lingkungan Hidup, ya melalui hal-hal yang disyaratkan di dalam AMDAL, RKL, RPL dan sebagainya dan berbagai kebijakan turunannya, itu sudah sangat-sangat mengharuskan industri memang mengikuti kaidah-kaidah yang ada. Termasuk juga dari Kementerian Perindustrian, ya, ada yang namanya pedoman teknis, ada yang namanya standar teknis kawasan industri, dan itu pun juga sudah dimasukkan semua hal-hal yang menjadi persyaratan bagi kita pengelola kawasan industri, bagaimana kita juga bisa membantu pemerintah di dalam rangka untuk melakukan pengawasan industri yang di dalam kawasan. Jadi merespon tadi pertanyaan dari moderator, justru sebetulnya memang kita berusaha dari sisi pelaku usaha ini justru mengambil peluang ya, manfaat dengan tren ramah lingkungan ini untuk yang pertama tentunya dari segi masalah efisiensi. Dan efisiensi ini memang tentunya diperoleh secara jangka panjang. Memang tentunya pertama kali harus melakukan investasi, ya khususnya hal-hal yang terkait dengan penggunaan energi baru terbarukan. Baik yang paling sederhana seperti solar panel maupun termasuk yang terkait dengan recycling untuk air limbah menjadi air bersih. Dan juga ini juga peluang bagaimana kita juga bisa lebih membangun reputasi bagi para customer kita dan meningkatkan daya saing kita sehingga kita secara korporasi bisa lebih meyakinkan kepada para customer bahwa dengan kita concern kita terkait dengan sustainability ini yang berhubungan dengan emisi udara ini itu bisa mendapatkan kepercayaan yang lebih baik daripada para klien-klien kita. Jadi sekali lagi mungkin intinya itu ini bukan hanya sekedar masalah kepatuhan atau compliance, namun ini juga bisa menjadikan momentum untuk industri meningkatkan daya saing kita.
Oke. Wah ini makin optimis kita Pak sebagai orang-orang yang bergerak di bidang udara bersih ya. Nah yang paling ditunggu-tunggu nih sepertinya dari narasumber lainnya, Pak Agung. Izin Pak, BNI merupakan salah satu pemain kunci dalam pembiayaan berkelanjutan di Indonesia. Apa saja jenis produk keuangan hijau yang saat ini menjadi bagian dari portfolio BNI dan instrumen pembiayaan apa saja yang dapat dimanfaatkan untuk mendukung inisiatif industri bersih dan udara bersih? Silakan Pak Agung.
Terima kasih. Sebetulnya BNI itu sudah lama juga dari sisi pembiayaan hijau. Tentunya juga dari sisi pembiayaan sosial juga. Jadi per hari ini kita ada portfolio kita itu sebesar 185 triliun dan pertumbuhannya itu sekitar 20-an%. Dari 185 triliun itu kombinasi hijau sama sosial. Dari 185 triliun itu hijaunya itu sekitar 75 triliun per hari ini. Dan itu pertumbuhannya itu 25%. Dan itu dalam bentuk green loan, kebanyakan green loan sih. Tapi juga ada yang sifatnya sustainable link loan. Nah, kalau green loan ya tentunya ini untuk proyek-proyek yang terkait dengan spesifik untuk environmental seperti misalnya geothermal ataupun juga transportasi bersih dan sebagainya. Tapi yang kita lihat sebenarnya SLL ini nggak terlalu banyak, masih sekitar 3-4 triliun, sekitar 7-8 triliun, jadi sekitar 350-an juta US dollar. Nah ini yang menarik sebenarnya SLL ini tuh tujuannya adalah untuk kalau misalnya industri itu memang dia ingin mengadres specific issues mengenai sustainability. Nah ini yang apakah itu digunakan di sektor semen, agriculture, steel, packaging, misalnya mau menurunkan impact dari water pollution, CO2 emisi, mengurangi emisi, dan sebagainya. Nah ini yang kita lihat sebetulnya dari sisi perbankan, itu sudah siap sebetulnya dengan produk-produknya. Tapi memang kita harus melihat dari sisi kenapa sih demand-nya kecil, kenapa sih demand segitu aja. Kalau kita pengen genjot lebih tinggi gitu kan, nah ini kolaborasi antara financial intermediary, pengusaha sama regulator penting sekali. Kalau misalnya itu regulasinya ada, tentunya perbankan akan menyesuaikan juga. Dan yang terakhir itu kita juga melihat bahwa sebetulnya kita juga involved di green bonds ataupun juga ESG bonds. Kita juga salah satu financial intermediary Himbara. Satu-satunya intermediary Himbara yang memiliki, yang di awal membeli carbon unit. Nah ini yang perlu ditekankan bahwa sebetulnya dari pihak BNI-nya sendiri gitu ya, kita secara infrastruktur, secara risk management policies itu kita sudah ubah menuju ke arah sana. Tinggal ininya aja, polusinya mana, tentunya kita produk akan menyesuaikan.
Terima kasih Pak. Wah ini menarik, kita udah semakin melihat nih kebutuhannya. Nanti kita akan bahas di round yang kedua ya Pak, untuk lebih lanjutnya. Sekarang saya akan kembali ke Pak Rasio dari Kementerian Lingkungan Hidup. Pak, modal filantropi kan juga bisa menjadi katalis ya Pak, meskipun skalanya terbatas. Bagaimana pemerintah melihat bisa berkolaborasi dengan donor internasional maupun pemodal swasta untuk membuka sumber pendanaan yang lebih besar bagi inisiatif udara bersih di sektor industri. Ini kita juga melihat tadi ada peran dari kementerian lain juga, jadi mungkin juga bisa berkolaborasi antar kementerian ya Pak. Silakan Pak.
Ya, terima kasih ya. Saya sangat senang tadi disampaikan oleh Kementerian Perindustrian, ya, mereka sedang mengkaji untuk berkaitan dengan baku mutu udara. Ya. Jadi biasanya kementerian-kementerian itu ingin lebih longgar, ini lebih ketat. Menurut saya sangat menarik Pak, terima kasih. Artinya kita mempunyai komitmen untuk menuju ke green industry itu semakin tinggi Bu. Tadi sampaikan Kementerian Industri sedang mengkaji untuk mengkaji kembali baku mutu ataupun batasan-batasan emisi kita Pak. Jadi ini saya senang, benar-benar hari ini saya benar happy Pak. Karena biasanya kami kalau bikin baku mutu lebih perketat, banyak protes. Hari ini didukung. Ya. Kedua kita bicara bagaimana optimasi pendanaan-pendanaan berkaitan dengan lingkungan, Pak. Ya, termasuk tadi bicara tentang sistem financial system ya. Kami punya program namanya Proper. Program penilaian kinerja perusahaan. Kita bikin rating perusahaan. Ya, ada 5 rating, the gold, green, blue, red, black. Jadi ya warna-warna kita ada 5, warna emas, hijau, biru, merah dan hitam. Ini informasi ini digunakan juga Pak oleh pasar modal, termasuk juga oleh teman-teman perbankan untuk menilai bagaimana risiko bisnis dari suatu perusahaan. Karena kami di pasar modal itu diwajibkan ya, listing kami diwajibkan itu. Saya itu melihat ada kemajuan untuk membangun industri hijau melalui sektor, didorong oleh sektor financial. Karena kalau perusahaan itu ratingnya bagus, maka tentu resiko financial risk juga menurun, Pak ya. Sehingga ini akan masuk. Jadi menurut kami ini opportunity, ini sangat jelas. Kalau perusahaan-perusahaan tersebut bekerja baik dalam konteks lingkungan atau mau berinvestasi dalam lingkungan hidup, maka perbankan dengan happy untuk membiayain, Pak. Karena kami percaya itu resikonya akan menurun, Pak. Karena resiko lingkungan itu besar, legislasi social risk, kemudian risiko penegakan hukum dan sebagainya. Karena berkaitan dengan tadi sampaikan bagaimana peranan filantropi maupun internasional. Menurut kami ya kita perlukan. Tadi saya jelaskan di opening remarks itu ada beberapa faktor menentukan keberhasilannya. Tentu kebijakan. Tadi kita senang tadi kebijakan kita lebih pro lingkungan. Kemudian faktor kelembagaan, bagaimana hubungan kementerian dan juga hubungan dengan dunia usaha dan juga faktor berkaitan infrastruktur, penyediaan sarana prasarana dan kunci semua adalah pendanaan. Jadi mudah-mudahan dengan terlibatan bank seperti BNI, kemudian juga stock market ya yang memprovide green bond maupun juga green green bond Pak ya. Dan juga stock market yang green itu akan lebih baik. Jadi menurut kami inilah kuncinya. Tidak mungkin kita bisa menghasilkan industri hijau tanpa didukung oleh finansial yang kuat dan juga berkelanjutan. Saya pikir ini kuncinya. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih Pak Rasio. Ini memang betul ya Pak, artinya sudah ada fondasi untuk sinerginya antara sektor financial dan juga lingkungan. Nah sekarang mari dari Pak Apit, dari perspektif Kementerian Perindustrian, teknologi produksi bersih membutuhkan investasi besar Pak. Selain pendanaan publik, bagaimana Kementerian Perindustrian akan menarik investasi swasta, baik melalui kebijakan, insentif, dan inisiatif-inisiatif, serta apakah ada mekanisme pembiayaan tambahan yang Bapak harapkan bisa mendukung? Silakan.
Biasanya saya jelasin ini 1 jam lebih nih Pak. Saya coba 3 menit. Jadi kami memang prinsipnya meregulate to create demand Pak. Jadi kami nggak takut Pak kita regulate lebih ketat, tapi kami juga pikirkan bagaimana permasalahan yang dihadapi oleh industri, khususnya akses to financing. Dan memang arahan dari pimpinan, kita boleh nurunin emisi GRK, mengatur dan mengendalikan dan menurunkan intensitas emisi polutan udara, tapi industri nggak boleh keluar uang Pak. Karena kalau industri harus menanggung cost-nya, itu akan menurunkan daya saing. Berarti kan kuncinya akses to financing, balik lagi ke situ. Dan di industri itu agak sedikit berbeda dengan power sector. Kita karakteristiknya tiket size-nya kecil-kecil tapi banyak nih Pak Agung. Beda dengan di energy sector, maunya kecil-kecil dikit tapi di atas 50 juta dolar gitu. Kalau kita pasang solar panel aja paling industri menengah cuma 10 miliar. Nah, untuk menjawab pertanyaan itu, tantangan tersebut, kami sedang menyusun satu ekosistem, itu ada dual mode lah kita sebutnya. Satunya adalah kita sebut GISCO, Green Industry Service Company. Dia adalah sebagai solution provider untuk menangani aspek teknis dan implementasi teknologi, melakukan verifikasi, audit dan seterusnya. Tapi di sisi lain kami juga membuat platform pembiayaan baru yang kita sebut IDCF, Indonesia Industrial Decarbonization and Competitiveness Facilities. Ini aggregated funding sedang di-develop sekarang, masuk Blue Book di Bappenas nanti. Dan itu akan menampung berbagai pembiayaan mulai dari sekarang World Bank sudah komit 600 juta dolar, nanti ada EIB, EIB, KfW, EDB, hampir semua multilateral development bank sudah approach dan sudah komit untuk memberikan juga kontribusi. Yang menarik dari skema ini Bapak Ibu, karena tadi perusahaan industri nggak boleh keluar uang gitu. Padahal ini kan green loan yang namanya loan harus dibalikin gitu ya. Lalu bagaimana cara si industri itu bisa ngembalikin pinjamannya gitu ya. Ada 3 cara Bapak Ibu yang kita identifikasi. Satu dari cost efficiency, itu dari OPEX itu terjadi cost efficiency. Pasang solar panel pasti terjadi energy efficiency. Energy efficiency ada cost efficiency. OPEX itu bisa digunakan untuk meng-offset biaya tadi. Opsi kedua, kalau kita sekarang sedang menggagas penerapan teknologi carbon capture and utilization. Bukan CCS, bukan CCUS Bapak Ibu. Kalau CCS, CCUS itu storage-nya itu keluar uang, storage fee, carbon capture-nya juga keluar uang. Kan syaratnya nurunin emisi dan juga meng-create economic value gitu. Nah economic value dari CCUS itu nangkep emisi dari flue gas, nurunin emisi polutan udara maupun emisi GRK dan menghasilkan byproduct dalam bentuk misalnya soda es, baking soda, metanol kalau hidrometalurgi. Kalau menggunakan mikroorganisme seperti algae bisa menghasilkan biomass, green hydrogen dan bahan baku kosmetik misalnya. Kita ada satu opsi lagi skema pembiayaan yang bisa digunakan, itu tadi byproductnya punya economic value untuk digunakan untuk payback. Satu lagi adalah skema carbon credit, kita bisa jual di ETS yang sedang kita bangun, maupun melalui skema voluntary carbon market yang sekarang sudah ada di Dex Carbon. Nah itu opsi-opsi yang kita tawarkan sehingga industri duduk manis saja gitu, nggak usah memikirkan balikin uangnya. Tapi mungkin ini perlu kami sampaikan karena ini konteksnya kita bicara tentang air pollutant, sementara ekosistem ini kami bangun untuk memfasilitasi penurunan emisi GRK. Sebetulnya ada peluang karena banyak sekali opsi teknologi yang bukan hanya menurunkan emisi GRK, tapi juga menurunkan emisi polutan udara. Nah ini kami bicara dengan berbagai stakeholder, kita mengidentifikasi jenis teknologi, opsi-opsi apa yang bisa secara langsung menurunkan dua-duanya sehingga bisa kami biayai melalui skema tadi, si dual mode itu GISCO dan IDCF tadi. Ini itu, terima kasih.
Baik, oke kita mendengar dukungannya nih Pak Sani. Bagaimana nih Pak? Sektor swasta memiliki peran penting dalam pembiayaan peralihan ke industri yang lebih bersih. Menurut Pak Sani, untuk mengurangi polusi udara dan mendorong keberlanjutan, model pembiayaan atau kemitraan seperti apa yang paling efektif untuk memobilisasi modal swasta dalam skala besar? Dan bagaimana Kadin dan Apindo dapat memperkuat kolaborasi antara dunia usaha, pemodal, dan pemerintah untuk mewujudkannya?
Oke, terima kasih. Jadi ini yang paling penting ya, karena bicara keberlanjutan bukan cuma dari sisi lingkungan, namun juga usahanya sendiri. Kalau usahanya sendiri nggak sustain, akhirnya juga percuma juga. Betul. Jadi memang ada beberapa skema ya, seperti apa itu blended financing, green financing, bagaimana mengkombinasikan antara model yang dikeluarkan oleh para pelaku usaha dengan memanfaatkan insentif-insentif yang dikeluarkan oleh pemerintah maupun dari lembaga-lembaga dana internasional. Itu yang pertama. Yang kedua, mungkin ini yang paling umum melalui skema public private partnership ya. Kebanyakan ini memang di dalam rangka untuk pembiayaan infrastruktur di dalam kawasan, membangun utilitas seperti sistem monitoring emisi, instalasi pengelolaan air limbah dan sebagainya. Kemudian yang ketiga, yang terakhir tadi yang disampaikan Pak Apit ya, mungkin dengan memanfaatkan yang namanya joint carbon mechanism itu ya, sekalipun memang ini perlu effort ya, tapi ya kalau ini ditekuni dan sebagainya, ini juga bisa menjadikan sesuatu yang menarik. Jadi Kadin dan Apindo dalam hal ini terus berperan memfasilitasi daripada ekosistem yang ada secara kolaboratif dengan cara kita menyatukan antara pelaku usaha, penyandang dana dan regulator di dalam dialog-dialog yang produktif seperti saat ini. Kemudian yang kedua juga bagaimana kita terus memberikan masukan-masukan yang positif ya, tentunya kepada Kementerian Perindustrian, Kementerian Lingkungan Hidup di dalam menyusun regulasi-regulasi yang lebih konsisten dan juga pro inovasi. Kemudian yang terakhir, yang ketiga, ya kita terus di dalam forum-forum yang ada diadakan oleh Kadin, Apindo dan seluruh asosiasi sektoral, kita terus melakukan satu pertukaran informasi, best practice apa yang sudah dilakukan oleh masing-masing entity supaya masing-masing juga bisa mendapatkan manfaat yang lebih baik. Saya rasa itu. Terima kasih.
Baik, Terima kasih banyak Pak Sani. Memang semangat kolaborasi itu sih yang selalu kita butuhkan ya Pak. Baik, saya akan kembali ke Pak Agung. Ini yang kita tunggu-tunggu juga Pak. Pendanaan teknologi baru dan proyek berdampak bersih membutuhkan manajemen resiko yang kuat. Bentuk dukungan regulasi atau insentif pemerintah apa yang paling dapat membantu BNI dan bank lain untuk meningkatkan pembiayaan di bidang ini untuk industri bersih, untuk polusi udara yang bisa kita turunkan juga. Silakan Pak.
Yang pasti kalau misalnya kita mau menggunakan itu, mohon maaf Pak Apit ya, kalau misalnya capex harus capex zero, itu kelihatannya nggak mungkin Pak. Karena di perbankan pun kita juga capex itu ada harus porsi equity-nya juga di situ ya. Cuman begini, kalaupun juga capex itu misalnya zero, jadi 100% adalah bank loans, itu pun juga harus ada yang namanya pricing, cost dari capital itu sendiri. Nah, bagaimana cost capital itu bisa rendah gitu ya. Nah, ini yang challenges mungkin kita tuh baru mulai dengan yang namanya carbon unit trading, tidak actively traded, pricingnya juga nggak liquid dan kita juga nggak tahu pricingnya berapa. Bagaimana kalau misalnya dan kebanyakan dari itu adalah sebetulnya mengenai verifikasi yang tidak bisa diterima oleh investor. Nah, kalau kita butuh ini jalan, itu investor harus masuk. Kalau investor masuk dengan sendirinya ada liquidity tercipta, capitalization tercipta, pricingnya juga bagus, dengan sendirinya yang namanya green loan, green bond, sustainable linked loan, itu akan benchmarking ke situ. Dengan sendirinya itu akan rendah. Terlepas dari tadi yang Bapak bilang mengenai rambu-rambu risikonya, bagus Pak. Kita akan mengikuti itu dan itu ada ratingnya masing-masing. Kita akan bisa assign pricing daripada itu. Tetapi sebetulnya itu policy secara keseluruhan sehingga yang namanya uang dari luar ini masuk. Ini cuma simple supply demand, kalau misalnya pricing itu adalah semakin banyak yang ngambil itu barang, dengan sendirinya pricingnya itu akan bagus gitu. Nah ini yang perlu dipertimbangkan. Yang kedua adalah ini kita juga kesulitan juga adalah untuk menggerakkan dengan lebih cepat karena sebetulnya terkait dengan PLN, makanya saya juga tanya Pak Febrio ada nggak di sini. PLN itu pengen punya kuku di semua proyek-proyek environment, ESG. Bagaimana mungkin kemudian kita bisa berlari dengan kencang kalau misalnya dia melakukan itu, kemudian terjadi adalah legal lending limitnya akan penuh di semua bank. Jadi nggak bisa ngapa-ngapain juga. Nah ini yang kita harus perlu pertimbangkan juga. Bagaimana dengan government risk sharing? Ini cuma bisa diterima oleh SMI, tapi bank-bank kita nggak bisa juga gitu. Kenapa sih kita nggak dikasih juga gitu kan? Terlepas dari tadi yang rambu-rambunya itu Pak, kita juga perlu juga ada semacam government risk sharing juga, karena sebenarnya kan duit yang dipakai itu duitnya nasabah, duitnya Bapak Ibu semua. Nah ini yang kita juga penting bahwa bagaimana kalau misalnya kita memberikan loan ke situ, itu uangnya balik. Lalu bagaimana dengan insentifnya, bagaimana juga Pak Sani kalau misalnya mau invest di sesuatu yang sifatnya bersih atau mengurangi polusi dan segala macam, tentunya kan IRR juga harus ada ya Pak Sani ya. Kalau enggak ntar shareholdersnya marah-marah gitu Pak Sani. Nah ini yang juga apa nih insentifnya nih. Mestinya, dan saya lagi nyari Pak Febrio di sini adalah, intinya adalah ICOR. Jadi incremental capital over returnnya itu tuh mesti ada. Memang ini tidak direct. Tapi ada indirect dan itu dampaknya tuh yang mesti dihitung juga gitu ya. Nah ini fiskal memiliki peranan penting dalam hal ini. Tapi kalau misalnya lain-lainnya kita bekerja sama dengan ADB, dengan DEG dan segala macam untuk memberikan financing, itu sudah terjadi. Jadi bisa dilakukan dengan scale dengan lebih besar. Kira-kira begitu deh saya, terima kasih.
Baik, terima kasih banyak Pak Agung. Saya menyadari waktunya nih yang terbatas. Sebenarnya saya masih pengen banget melanjutkan diskusinya. Tapi kita sudah mendengar nama yang dicari-cari ya Pak. Jadi kita tahu langkah berikutnya dari teman-teman yang aktif bergerak di udara bersih. Kalau kita mau ini ada next actionnya, kita udah tahu nih next meeting kita sama siapa gitu ya. Baik, kalau begitu saya izin mengucapkan terima kasih kepada seluruh narasumber atas diskusi yang penuh wawasan. Diskusi ini menegaskan bahwa kolaborasi lintas sektor, komitmen industri sangat penting untuk mempercepat aksi udara bersih di sektor industri. Semoga percakapan hari ini tidak berhenti di ruang ini, tapi menjadi langkah awal menuju perwujudan udara bersih di Indonesia. Saya Kristal, selaku moderator, mohon maaf jika ada kekurangan yang selama jalannya sesi ini. Terima kasih dan saya kembalikan kepada MC.
Thank you so much to all speakers and our moderator for such an insightful and engaging discussion. We will now proceed to a brief photo session and we invite our photographer to prepare. Please come forward to the center of the stage, our speakers and moderator, and we will take a brief photo together. In 3, 2, 1. At the center of the stage. All right. In 3, 2, 1. And now we would like to invite Ibu Novita Natalia, Ibu Batari Saraswati, and all our panel speakers from the first panel discussion to come forward to take a photo session together.